All right, I think we are good. I'm almost an hour late. So let me share this in the group really quickly. I am completely dependent right now on my daughter's work schedule, Chloe, because we need a vehicle for her. So because we only have 3 vehicles for 4 drivers in the family, and I'm the only one who doesn't have an outside job, I'm the one at home without a vehicle. So thank goodness for Walmart delivery because I've definitely used that a couple times. Okay. There we go. So that is posted in the group. If you are not part of Gently Led Sisters group, go ahead and join that. Okay. Get the chat over here situated. Let me pull up my email with my outline. Waiting for people to join. All right, so this topic was a listener suggestion, and I know I've done this before in the past. Now, I'm going to say some of my topics I'm going to be redoing, as I have suggestions. A lot of women, they, myself included, maybe they're newer listeners, maybe they've only been listening for a year, 2 years. I've been around a long time. Like I started this when my oldest was 16. He is 23 now. So it's been 7 years, over 7 years. It'll be 8 years. I think this coming March or something like that. So, there's a lot of videos that I've done. I've probably covered almost everything to do with motherhood that I have had experience in, I've covered. But I understand how annoying it is to have to weed through things when you're looking for something specific. So if I am repeating myself, I am so sorry. If you are a longtime listener for all 7 years that I'm repeating myself, I'm so sorry. But there are some subjects that are brought up that people want me to redo. So I completely understand. And maybe I have better advice than I did 7 years ago. Maybe I have worse advice. I don't know. I do know that I was more in the midst of having tons of little kids, 6, 7 years ago than I am now. Obviously, my life is going to change from season to season. It's going to change. It's different now than it was when I had all little kids. And, I have adult kids now and a grandchild now. And so my day-to-day life is going to look a little different through each season of life. But I'm hoping that I can still remember those postpartum days and remember what it's like having a newborn and remember what it's like having all these little kids. I have not forgotten. It hasn't been that long. So hopefully I can still help some of you that are looking for help. So today's topic is about mom guilt. And just out of curiosity, I Googled how many women deal with mom guilt on a daily basis. And it kind of shocked me because it said upwards of, some studies said 87% of moms feel guilty. Some studies said upwards of 94% of moms feel guilty. Now, this is quite different than, you hear about mom guilt, but you don't hear much about dad guilt. And I'm going to tell you that my husband does not lay awake in bed at night thinking, what could I have done better? Men, they're just doers. Like if they just, how do I put this? So women, we're more worriers, right? Like I worry a lot more than my husband does. I sit around worrying about, I don't know. And Allison is just like me. She is like me on steroids. And I have to tell this funny story of her at driver's ed. I don't know if I've told it on here yet, but this just cracked me up because this just shows Allie's personality. So she's in driver's ed and the driving teacher asks, he's like, how does the law of gravity work when it comes to different speeds on the car, like going faster, going slower, whatever? And the correct answer was like, if you go up a hill, obviously it's going to go slower. You're going to need to press on the gas more. when you're coming down the hill, gravity is going to work to push you forward and make you go faster. You don't have to push on the accelerator that much. Well, Allie raised her hand and she said, how about if there's a tornado and the tornado picks you up and that makes you go faster? And he was just like, okay, in the 11 years that I've been doing this, I've never had that answer. And I said, leave it to Allie, because in her mind, obviously we live in the Midwest. Tornadoes are a thing here. So in her mind, she's thinking worst case scenario, I'm driving in the car and a tornado picks me up. So that's Allie. So, that just kind of shows you how her brain works. And I'm just thinking, oh, you poor child, when you have kids, you're going to be laying in bed, like thinking about all these scenarios that could happen with your kids. Not good. You need to get that under control. So I thought that was hilarious, but you don't often hear about dads just laying in bed thinking, what could I do better? Because, and moms give our all too, but dads, they go to work, they provide, they're doing their part. And I don't think they're sitting around thinking, what can I do better? Maybe some are stressed about finances. I don't know. And so but if men are stressed about finances, I know in the past with my husband, when we needed extra money, he goes and he gets a second job. So men are doers, like they'll go do something about it, right? Where women are a little different. But recent surveys and studies show that the vast majority of mothers, often 80% or higher, experience mom guilt at some point. Some studies even suggest the number is closer to 100%. That's what I found. I found most studies said 94%, which is crazy. The exact percentage varies depending on the specific study and the methodology used, but the overall finding is consistent. Mom guilt is an almost universal experience. It doesn't matter if you live in America, if you live in China, wherever you live, mom guilt is a thing, okay? So here are some specific findings from different sources. A recent survey of 300 moms found that 100% of participants felt guilty at least once a day, with 57% experiencing it 3 to 10 times a day. I would say it's better now, and we'll talk about that as we go on in the show. These girls are bugging me. We'll talk about that as we go on in the show, but I do feel like the older you get and the more experienced you get, the mom guilt does diminish a bit as you see your kids being successful, especially when it comes to like the homeschooling part, right? Because we always are like, am I doing enough? Is my kid learning enough? Is he reading well enough? Oh my goodness, I didn't have him do trigonometry. That's going to ruin his chances for becoming president, like all this crazy stuff we think. And I will say, as you see your adults doing better in life, you kind of start being confident, like, okay, I've got this. It's working. Homeschooling's working. They're successful, they're doing great in life, whatever. So, yeah, I know Allie is in driver's ed. It's crazy. Tonight is actually her last night of the teaching. And then she has driving time with the teacher. Here in Illinois, if you're not 18, you do have to do some type of driver's education. And here in town, we have a driving school that we really like. And we know the gentleman very well because this is kid number 5 he has taught. And when I was signing Allie up, his mom is the one that does all the paperwork and stuff for him. And his mom was like, hey, do you recognize this lady? And he's like, oh yeah, one of my most faithful customers, because he's not now on kid number 5. So he doesn't say that. He can't say that he's done like 5 with the same family. And I told him, I said, stick around another 10 years until, Hannah's 15, another 10 or 11 years, and you'll get all 8 of our kids. So it's pretty funny, but yeah, she is in driver's ed. It's crazy. Now I'm not looking forward. She's never driven. She has to get her permit first before she can start driving. I'm not looking forward to that. Just going to say, I am not the one that teaches my kids to drive. My husband is. That's his department. So because I'm a worrier and I'm a panicker, I panic, especially when I'm in the car and I have no control over the brakes or, I don't like it. So my husband does all that. So anyways, an Instagram post cited data suggesting that 87% of mothers feel guilty at some point and 21% report feeling guilty all the time. Research cited in Psychology Today found that 87% of mothers had experienced mom guilt, with one study indicating moms feel an average of 23 pangs of guilt per week. Oh yeah, I would definitely think it's that much at least. An oldertoday.com article reported 94% of mothers have experienced mom guilt. One 2024 survey revealed that 52.5% of mothers experience mom guilt sometimes, with 24.3% feeling it often. And then there's also studies from the by Nuk, I think, found 87% of moms had experienced feeling mom guilt, with another study showing that moms felt on average 23 pangs of guilt per week. So research also shows that mom guilt stems from a wide range of issues, such as balancing work and home. And I'm going to say, obviously my channel is kind of devoted towards like the Christian genre of Baptists, like stay at home wives and moms, right? So there are situations where moms have to work outside the home. And I actually think that this probably contributes a lot to mom guilt. And, it is hard having to bear like two parts of that, right? Because thankfully I've never had to work because I had to work, right? Like I teach piano on the side, but it's not because like we're not meeting our bills, right? That kind of covers all the extras in life and the fun things in life. But it's also something that I enjoy, that brings fulfillment to me, teaching kids piano and things. And I know it's just it's very fulfilling for me, which is one of the other reasons that I do it. But my husband has never been like, I need you to go to work. Like, we're not making it. I need you to go to work. He's always gotten a second job if need be. And I'm very grateful for that. So I can imagine that if you are in a position where you have to work outside the home, that would contribute to a lot of feelings, a lot more feelings than maybe the listeners, my normal listeners, have or experience, right? Because that would be really hard to balance work and home life, because I do think that women, we have this innate desire in us to just take care of our kids all the time. Like, God gave us these kids. We want to be the ones raising them. We want to be home with them. And if you're forced to get a job outside of that, I really do feel for you, because that would be really tough to balance just spending enough time with your kids. And so I do feel for you. But the genre of the people that mainly watch my show, with the exception of the haters, even some of the haters, actually, with the exception of them, they stay home with their kids. So we don't have that extra layer. Thankfully, I don't have that extra layer. If I need to, and I'm feeling like, okay, things are really getting away from me, the housework's really getting away from me, my relationship with my kids is really getting away from me, I can just go back on piano lessons. I can take a week off. It's not that big of a deal. So for me, I'm in that position to be able to do that, where I know some of you that watch might not be able to, and my heart does go out to you. But yeah, balancing work and home. Many moms feel guilty about their inability to excel in all areas of their lives, whether they are working outside the home or are stay-at-home mothers. And I'm going to say, God put the desire in us to raise our kids and raise our family. And so if we're also trying to be a boss babe at the same time, that might go against our natural desire to just be at home raising the kids. So time with children, not feeling like you spend enough quality time with your kids, is a very common cause of guilt. Self-care. I think the self-care one is more of an issue with the genre that watches my show than the whole like balancing work and home, because I will say that most women who watch my show are stay-at-home moms, but we pour so much of ourselves into our kids and our family that we almost feel guilty when we take time for ourselves, or we have a side thing that we like, or, we invest in getting healthy or getting fit or going to the gym, or even hobbies that we like, such as reading or crocheting or art or whatever it is. And I do think that needs to not be the case. We do need to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves as well, because it's like the illustration with the people on the plane. You put your oxygen mask on first, and then you can help others. So if we're completely running on empty all the time, and we've depleted our health, and we've depleted our mental capacity, and we've completed our emotional reserves, it's going to be really hard to pour into our children and our family the way that we need to. So I do think the self-care thing is a bigger issue for those of you that watch my show. And then this is a big one too: social media comparison. Scrolling through seemingly perfect portrayals of motherhood on social media is a major contributor to feelings of guilt and inadequacy. And I'm just going to say right here, this is one area where I have always tried to be authentic and real when it comes to my social media presence. I have a super tiny, small niche, group of, or I say platform. But I have never tried to maintain this false representation of my life and how I am at home, how I am at church. I am who I am, and I'm just real about it. So if I don't have a problem with something that my kids do, I'm not going to act like I have a problem with it. Let's say, watching a movie or, whatever. So I've never claimed to be perfect. I have bad days just like everyone else. Things don't always run smoothly in my home. Sometimes it's chaos. Sometimes it's chaos and sometimes it's panic. I'm trying to put those two words together. Sometimes it's chaos and sometimes it's this kid crying and this kid hitting this kid and, wailing and gnashing of teeth and all sorts of calamities going on. So I've never tried to portray this false ideal because I have seen some social media influencers that as I'm scrolling, I just refuse to watch any of their content. There's this one lady, she had like 10 kids and she would literally get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and she dressed them all in white. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? It was really weird. Like she dressed all of her kids in white and they were like, it was like this perfectly clean, sterile home. It was super fancy, but it was like sterile. Like everything was white in the home. And they would like get up at 4:30 and like exercise and do all these music things. And I'm like, this is so dumb. Like, first of all, I don't even know anyone in my own personal life that lives this way. And also she's putting this forth like it's this ideal way of life and people are going to try to emulate that. And for me, I just don't think that's possible, especially with like 10 kids. But anyways, I digress. You have to be really careful with social media. Social media is not always as it appears. There have been many influencers such as Ruby Frankie, cough, cough. There have been many social media influencers who put on a false pretense and a false persona only to find out that horrible things were going on inside their home. So anyone can play a part. Anyone can fake an act, but it's just don't go off social media. Influencers, go off people in real life, people that you see that are putting this into action, that are actually raising good kids and that are actually raising kids with relationships with them and that are actually raising kids that will follow along in their footsteps after they get out of the house, and emulate those type of people, like real life examples, not social media influencers who nothing about personally, nothing that goes on behind the scenes. So social media is pretty fake. So that being said, sorry, I'm going to try to, yes, make sure you are happy in real life. That is a good quote. Exactly. I love the lady that shows her mess that's just off camera of the clean part. I know that is so funny because even this is fake because guys, look over there at that mess. I literally moved all the mess off camera. So it's really easy to get a clean section, and it's really easy to just push all the mess to one side. And that right there is real life. I just found this lady who does videos of her homeschool day and she posts her real homeschool day. And I love her because she has impatient moments. And, teaching kids to read is frustrating and it is hard work. And it's not always like butterflies and bees and, classical music playing in the background. And it takes everything out of you to remain calm. It takes everything in you to remain calm and pleasant. And sometimes you're going to get annoyed and sometimes you're going to roll your eyes and that's okay. It's called being human. And I love the moms that will post the real raw footage of them just being human. Being human, not everything is perfection. And I love that. I love when people are just real and authentic. So let's talk about mom guilt from the perspective of someone who's been a mom for decades now. I've been a mom for decades. I've dealt with it almost every day of my life. I will say now that I'm an older mom, it's not as prevalent as when I was a young mom. When I was a young mom, Sometimes I would lay in bed and maybe I lost it at the kids. Maybe I was impatient. Maybe I just had a terrible day where I was fighting a headache the whole day and they were fighting with each other. And I just wanted to quit by, 5 p.m., which is like the witching hour, right? 5 to 7. Horrible when you're a young mom. Oh, and you lay in bed and you think, okay, this was terrible. I'm a terrible person. I'm a terrible mom. I don't even have anything left to give to my husband at the end of the day. But you know what? Your kids are alive and they're in bed with a roof over their heads and their tummies full. And with parents who truly do love them and want the best for them, it's going to be okay. If you don't feel guilty at times, are you even mothering? The ones that I know that feel guilty, I would look at them and say, you are a great mom. Like, you are doing a great job. You are taking care of your kids. They know you love them. They love Jesus. They're growing up knowing that their parents love them, that they love Jesus. They're fed, they're happy. You're letting them be kids. You're a great mom. The best mothers experience mom guilt. I'm sure, like, even Mary in the Bible experienced mom guilt. I'm sure she did, because we all do. And she was raising a perfect child. And I'm sure she was experiencing mom guilt. When they forgot Jesus when he was 12, I'm sure she experienced mom guilt. Like, what is wrong with me? Literally forgot the Son of God. What is wrong with me? So I'm sure she experienced mom guilt too. And mom guilt is worse when you haven't raised kids to adulthood yet. I'm just going to say that. When they're little, you're second guessing yourself. Like, am I doing this right? I don't even know if this is going to work. What if I'm too hard? What if I'm too soft? What if I don't discipline enough? What if I discipline too much and I raise them to hate me? And when it comes to the discipline things, I'm going to say, first and foremost, your kids need to know that you love them, because love covers a multitude of mistakes. Love covers a multitude of sins. And if you are constantly just bringing the hammer down and you show zero grace to your kids, I do believe that God kind of looks at you the same way. Would you want God bringing the hammer down on you for every little thing that you did wrong and for constantly just getting after you? No words of affirmation, no words of love, just constant. You did this, hammer. You did this, hammer. Bringing the hammer down constantly. Just remember that your kids have not been around very long. Your 5-year-old's only been around 5 years. Your 2-year-old's only been around 2 years. Don't expect them to act like a 15-year-old or a 20-year-old or a 25-year-old or a 40-year-old or a 35-year-old. They're little. They're new to this life. They have to learn how to regulate their emotions and their temper and their desires, just like you have to learn to regulate your impatience and your temper. And when things go wrong, you are learning to regulate that as well. So just be really careful with showing all punishment, discipline, and no grace, no mercy, no love. And make sure your kids know that you love them. That's the biggest thing. Make sure that they know that. It's not, mom guilt in and of itself isn't always bad, because I look back at certain times in my life and sometimes it's the Holy Spirit telling me I need to improve some things. That might be my mood. That might be my attitude. That might be the way that I'm treating their dad. That might be the way, maybe I have too high of expectations of them and I'm killing their spirit as I'm trying to, discipline them. And sometimes the Spirit is telling me, Cassandra, you need to change some things. And so I am also a doer. I don't like sitting around complaining. I don't like sitting around worrying. I don't like sitting around. I'm an action taker. I will take action. So if my whole life is just chaos and the kids are out of control and my house is out of control and I feel like I cannot stay on top of anything, I come up with a plan. Okay, this is what I need to do. I need to have the kids in bed by a certain time every night so that I do have something left to give to their dad at night. I need to implement a cleaning schedule. I need something written down where I can follow along and mark things off, or I need an app on my phone where I can go through and check things off to keep me on top of things. I need to set timers. I need to stay off my phone. I'm scrolling social media too much. Like, if you are just feeling the Spirit telling you, okay, you're spending too much time on Facebook. Okay, you're spending too much time playing games. I don't even have games on my phone. I'm not a game player. I'm barely even a TV watcher. That's not my vice at all. My vice would be like reading or something like that, like reading or writing. I love to write. All of you know that. That would be like my thing. So I'm spending too much time reading, or I'm spending too, you know how you spend your time. And so sometimes it's the spirit just telling you. So be sensitive to that. If you have an area of your life that's completely out of control, fix it. Now, if you know that I am doing my absolute best, like I am pouring myself into my family, I am, you know, focusing on my relationship with the Lord, like I'm reading my Bible and I'm praying and I'm trying to be close to him and I'm letting him control me throughout the day instead of giving into my desires, like, wasting too much time, or instead of letting my flesh take over when it comes to being impatient with the kids or having a temper. If you know that you're doing everything correctly, then there is nothing else you can do. There's no room for mom guilt in that situation, but just be sensitive to the spirit's correction if he's telling you something. So it's like when you get constructive criticism from someone, right? When you get constructive criticism, I always, first of all, consider the source. Secondly, is there any element of truth to that? Or is there no element of truth? Are you doing the best that you can, or are they just completely off base with what they're saying about you? If they're completely off base with what they're saying about you, just move on. I was watching something the other day. I like watching like all this like psychology type stuff about, just keeping your emotions under control, and because I'm a big proponent of that and all this stuff. And it was saying that it takes 90 seconds. Something will make you angry, and it takes 90 seconds to where you can either get over it or you start dwelling on it. And when you start dwelling on it, that's when your brain kind of takes over, right? So it was saying that if someone makes you mad or someone cuts you off, before that 90 seconds is over, just kind of move past it and get over it. Because once we dwell on something longer than 90 seconds, it kind of takes root, and then we really start obsessing about it and, different things like that. So that's an area where you can take your thoughts under control. If you get cut off in traffic, obviously there's horrible stories out there of people that let that rage build and then they end up committing road rage type things or crimes. So, once something makes you mad, take a breather, just move past the 90 seconds and don't let it bother you anymore. Different times of your cycle are also going to be different. So keep track of where you are. I have an app on my phone where I just keep track of all that, and I'm kind of aware anyways. And so, when you're going to be more sensitive, like the last week of your cycle, things are going to affect you more. It's not a bad life. It's just a bad week of your cycle. If you're very, very heavily pregnant, you're going to take things a lot harder than if you're not pregnant, or if you're just newly pregnant or whatever, So there's different times of your cycle that are going to play into your moods. And that could just be it. And you might just need to tell yourself, okay, everything's fine. There's no area in my life that really needs a lot of work. And this is just the time of my cycle. So I just need to put these thoughts out of my head. I need to lay down. I need to go to sleep. Things will look better in the morning. Realize sometimes that life is just crazy and you just need to hang on. Okay. There's going to be different seasons in your life. There's going to be, with different kids' ages. Sometimes life is just hairy, and that's okay. If you've got a lot of kids under 5, hang on, sister. It'll get better. But just take a deep breath. And if you keep the kids alive and fed, and you keep your house running in some semblance of order, you're doing great. Okay. That's a lot when you've got that many kids at that age. Give yourself some grace and lower your expectations. I've had some people buck me on this. Most of the time, younger moms that are type A type personalities, they will say, if I lower my expectations, then I'm not going to have any expectations, and the house is just going to go to pot, and the kids are going to be crazy. And no, that it's okay to have some expectations. Like, I expect my kids to obey me. I expect my kids not to run away. I expect my kids to listen to their dads and I advise, different things like that. It's not okay to expect your kids to be robotic, to have no will, for there never to have to be, training sessions, or that's above and beyond, normal expectations. So sometimes you just need to lower your expectations and remember how old your kids are. I've seen some young moms that expect their 2-year-olds to act like 20-year-olds. And it's just, I'm like, okay, a little cringe there because they've only been alive for 2 years. They're not a full adult yet. Give them some grace. Give them some grace. Figure out your priorities. So I would say in my life, we have some clear-cut priorities, right? Obviously, having a Christian home is the top of the list. We want to act Christian-like in our home. My husband and I want to be godly in every area of our lives. We want to be holy in every area of our lives, and we want to model that for our children. So that's number one on the list. Our marriage would be a strong second. We definitely put a lot of time and effort into our marriage. We go on dates together. We have times throughout the week, usually one day at least, where we'll go hiking together. We'll do some activity together. We go to bed at the same time every night together. There's some things as a wife only you can do for your husband, and that needs to be a priority. Not enough older moms are telling the younger moms that like the physical relationship is very important in a marriage. And I'm not ashamed of saying that because the Bible says it. The Bible says for us not to defraud each other, and that goes both ways. And so it's a very clear command in the Bible for married people. So there should be no shame in saying you need to put priority on that physical relationship. It is only to be found in the bonds of marriage. Or in the bounds of marriage. And so it is very important that is a priority. So that might look like, and for me, anyone that watches my show for a long time knows that I put a lot of emphasis on getting the kids on a good sleep schedule. And that is mainly, especially when you have little kids, so you and your husband have some time alone in the evening to enjoy each other's company, to enjoy each other physically, whatever it is, you have that time alone in the evening. So when we had little kids, my lifeline was getting them to bed at 7. When I had 3 kids, 3 and under, they had to be in bed by 7. And we were very strict about enforcing the fact that, okay, you go potty, you brush your teeth, you get a drink of water. We do our little routine with singing and praying and all that. Then you stay in bed. And we train them from a very early age to stay in bed. And so then that contributed to good sleep, which also contributed to better behavior. And I will say we've gotten a little lax with our kids, and it shows, and that's all on me. That's totally on me. And it's because we have older kids now. So, we'll put them to bed, and oftentimes it's later than our other kids would have been. We're not looking at 7 anymore. We're looking at like 8:39. And the older kids are like, we were always in bed by 7. Sometimes it would be light out and we would be people outside playing and we were in bed. But I had to do it back then for my sanity's sake. So you find things that help you keep your sanity. And then 2, that's not going to make you feel guilty, because then you're better. You're in a better mood. You're more refreshed. You're less likely to lose your temper, lose your patience, whatever it is. So you find things that help. Okay. So marriage is big on the priority list for us. Church, I think, would be next. We're very involved in church. My kids are at church. Church takes priority. Then I would say homeschooling is definitely next. Homeschooling is a big thing to me. Like, if I am getting my kids homeschooled through their school every day, if I am focusing on my relationship with the Lord, if I am exhibiting what that Christian life is to my children, that's a good day. If we have to have frozen pizza, that's not a bad day. If I have to, make eggs or make pancakes or some simple meal, that's not a bad day. That doesn't ruin my day. That's not huge on the priority list for me. Cooking all these fancy meals, that's not huge on the priority list for me. And your priority list might look different. Maybe that's important to your husband, but it's not that important for us. Like, big, extravagant, fancy meals are not important to us. For me, I'd rather spend my time making sure my kids are through school, making sure the house is picked up and cleaned. And if I have to throw a frozen pizza in, we do a frozen pizza. If I have to do chicken nuggets, we do chicken nuggets. It's not that big of a deal to me. So that's not high on the priority list for me. And then a clean home, it is pretty high on my priority list. I feel like my life is out of control and my house is disgusting. And so when I have my house under control, life goes a lot more smoothly for me, and it clears a lot of space in my head. So if I have those things done, then that's good. And then any other activities outside the home, that comes last, on the list, whatever that is. If that's extracurricular sports or music lessons or whatever, That comes last. So one thing to help the mom guilt is to keep your cool. And I don't know any mom that sat around thinking, "Oh, I'm so happy I blew up at my kids today. I'm so happy I lost my temper." No, we all struggle. We all think I shouldn't have snapped at my kid. I shouldn't have said this. I shouldn't have said that. So definitely, my biggest times of mom guilt have been after getting super frustrated with my kids. And your tongue has it can have a lot of poison in it. And you can cut down your kids very quickly with your tongue, more so than anything, really. You can kill their spirit faster with your tongue. So just watch that tongue. It's so important to watch that tongue. Realize that your kids are not your enemy. Having kids and having lots of them, it's going to bring stress into your life. That's just a given. But God gave them to you. You decided to have all these kids. They're not your enemy. They're a blessing. They're a huge burden sometimes because they take a lot of work and they take a lot of money. Yes, we acknowledge that. But they are going to be your biggest blessing in life. And just hang in there, invest in them, and it will pay off. It really will. Don't realize your husband is not your enemy. He's on the same team as you. So it's never good when parents pit against each other towards the kids, especially in front of their kids, or the kids try to pit the parents against each other. My kids have not really tried that very much because they soon learn you're not going to do that with us. Like, he is my guy and I am his girl and we're on the same team here. You're not going to make us fight with each other or get us mad at each other. So we're united in what we think, or how we should proceed with this with you. So, you need to present a united front to your kids. Don't take stress out on your kids. Sometimes you're going to have a really hairy day, and the last thing you want to do is just take that stress out on your kids. They're not the enemy. They're not the problem. Have a happy marriage. This is one of the biggest things for alleviating mom guilt, is having a happy marriage. Definitely make that one of your main priorities. Like, I'm going to have a happy marriage. I'm telling you, one of the keys to raising happy, successful, balanced kids is by you having a happy marriage. It's essential to raising really good children. And they need to see that, you're together for the long haul. There's no divorce word ever thrown out. They don't need to see you guys yelling at each other, screaming at each other, throwing things at each other, kicking holes in the wall, whatever it is. That's going to produce a lot of fear and anxiety in them. So if you have a really happy marriage, that's going to alleviate a lot of the mom guilt, just because your kids are also going to be happier and more balanced when you have a happy marriage. So, keep church issues at church. Don't bring them home. That's one thing that my husband's always been really good at. He's able to separate church issues from, in fact, sometimes I won't even know something stressful is going on with any given situation, whether that's financial or relationship issues with someone at church. I won't even know about it because he's so chill. Like, if it stays at church, he leaves it at church. And then when he gets home, he's just my husband and he's my kid's dad. Like, he leaves pastor mode behind. He's not pastor in the home as well. And there's a lot of pastors' families that the husband actually doesn't know how to differentiate between the roles, and he carries that pastor role even into the home. And the kids suffer because of that, because he might come down harder on them. Maybe there's something that they're doing that irritates him when church members do it. And so he takes his frustration on the church member doing it out on his children. And I've seen that happen a lot. Or there's annoying women at the church and he sees his wife do something similar and it triggers him. And so then he like overreacts to his wife. There's a lot of men that don't know how to separate those roles, and they end up bringing it home with them. And then that is going to create a bitter spirit in the children. They're going to be resentful of the ones causing the problems that their parents are talking about. They're going to be resentful of them, or they're going to resent church members just because they know their dad's being over the top with them because he's irritated at a church member. So you got to be really careful about that if you're in ministry. Leave church issues at church. Don't bring them home. And then talk kindly of others. Talk kindly of your church people. Talk kindly of friends. Don't come home and just, nitpick everyone and tear people apart. And because your kids are going to get it in their head that, like, no one is as good as us. Like no one's as good as us. And church people are all lame and church people are all stupid. And I don't want anything to do with this church. And they'll walk away as soon as they turn 18. That happens a lot. So be careful about that. Apologize and admit fault if needed. You know, sometimes you just got to tell your kids, I overreacted. It's been a really stressful day and I took it out on you. And I'm so sorry for that. You know, I snapped at you when I should not have. Just be the bigger person and apologize, admit fault, and then rely on Jesus. I do think motherhood shows us how much we need a savior and how much we need Jesus and how imperfect we are, because oftentimes our children will exhibit in their lives our weaknesses. And we're like, wow, like almost like, ouch. I understand where she comes. You know, I understand, like with Allison, I know how her brain works because she's like me on steroids. And when I was her age, I did not have Google. So I could not Google all of these horrific, weird freak accidents that could happen to you or weird freak illnesses that you can get. Allison can do that. And so now she's got like all of the worry plus what Google tells her, like you're dying, you're going to die tomorrow if you don't go see a doctor about this, you know? So parenting really brings out imperfections in our own life. We can see them exhibited clearly in our children. And instead of just freaking out on our children for it, we need to have some grace and realize, yeah, they got that from me. And, you know, I can guide them and I can try to help them through this, but I don't need to freak out on them. I don't need to panic or freak out on them or whatever. So, but ask for some help if you need it. Okay. There's no shame in asking for help. Take some time for yourself. It is a great way to recharge. And one thing that I've often done is I'll just text my husband and I'll say, it's your shift. Like I'm done. I'm up to here. I need to just like leave the house and go to Goodwill. I need to go to a thrift store. I need to get a coffee. They had free coffee today. I don't know if you know, but I got my free coffee. You know, I need to go get a coffee. I need to go to the library. I love going to libraries and just browsing the books, getting some books. That's like an escape for me. I need to do this. And, you know, if you have a loving husband like mine is, and he understands how huge it is just to stay at home all day with the kids, he will be understanding and he will say, I will be home in 5 minutes and then you go. And he will let you recharge. And there's no shame in that. Sometimes we need some moments to ourselves to recharge and then everything just seems better, right? Like those problems don't seem as big and those stresses don't seem as stressful. So everything is just better. Well, Raquel, that's the best thing to do. She said, my son with autism literally asks questions every minute of every day. And sometimes I would lose it, but would apologize and hug. And we'll just tell him, you give me 1 hour with no questions, then you can resume with asking. Sometimes we just need to be honest with our kids and tell them we're having a hard time. I think that's a really good, I literally have talked with my kids since the time they came out of my womb. And I talk to them about everything. And I'll just be honest with them. Listen, I'm really struggling today. I have a migraine. Things are really stressful. I mean, this morning, I went to go get ready. And I didn't even realize this till like 2 hours later, but I went to go get ready and I was putting in my contacts and I was like, oh my goodness, I have to call about contacts because I need new contacts before our conference next week. I need to get new contacts before we go to Florida because it's affecting my vision really badly. And it's been like 2 years since you're supposed to go yearly for contacts, but I always like right before my prescription ends, I order enough contacts to get through like the next year. And so I'll go 2 years between eye appointments because they're so expensive. Literally every place around here that I called was booked through November. And so now I'm like, great, what am I going to do? That takes my insurance. So we found a place in Kiwani that it doesn't take my insurance, but I'm just going to have to pay out of pocket. But I was like, I'm getting desperate because I have to have these contacts before all this stuff happens because I almost wonder if that's what's giving me headaches and it's just affecting my whole life. So I found this place. And then after I was finally done doing that, I realized I haven't done like routine dental appointments for like a year or two with my kids. And I really need to get them in because I want to stay on top of that because I don't want it to get away, like them get cavities, whatever. So then I started calling the dentist that we normally go to, and they were booked out through March. I'm thinking, what is going on? Why are all these places like booked out to eternity? Come. And so they said, but we have this other office that just opened an hour from here in Freeport. They're like, we can book dental. So I was like, yes. So I got all those booked for the 4 Allie and Down that are at home. Allie and Abby, or Chloe and Abby, I didn't even get to. I just did those 4. And so by that time, it had been 2 hours of me just like calling vision places, dental places. And I had to just like, I'm on the phone and Lana's just like jabbering about something. I finally just had to say, Lana, I'm really preoccupied right now because I was on the phone. I'm told. I was like, I'm really preoccupied. And can you tell me the story when I'm done? And so she did. It was fine. That was fine. I would not have been that patient in my younger days. I would have been like, get out of this room. I'm on the phone. Can you not see I'm busy? What is wrong with you? You know, I know you have good vision. I might not have good vision, which is why I'm on the phone. You know, I might have snapped or whatever, but I was able to handle it calmly. So sometimes our kids just need to know they're not stupid. They're going to see that you're stressed out or whatever. So just tell them, mommy's really stressed right now. You need to give me just a minute and then I'll attend to whatever you need, you know? So, oh my goodness. You know, you're an adult when you spend like half the morning just scheduling and calling places for your dental and eye vision, whatever. So anyways, where was I? Oh, yes. So, you know, take some time for yourself, get the kids on a sleep schedule. I always say that, already said that, have alone time with your husband at night. That is really important. You're going to feel better. You know, it's just, your husband needs an hour or 2 of your night. Give it to him and you'll be a lot happier and he'll be a lot happier. Don't feel badly for needing some time for yourself. Like I said, sometimes you just need to recharge. Relaxing is not laziness. It's okay to scroll on your phone for 30 minutes a day after you've spent the whole day cleaning and organizing and teaching. And that's okay. We need some downtime. Even Jesus had downtime. Probably not scrolling Facebook, but Jesus had downtime too. Down days are good. Relax your expectations and just soak up the self-care. One thing that I've done is my Mondays are kind of my down day. So I don't even set an alarm for Monday mornings. And I've really been running on low sleepish for me lately, about 6 hours, which is not enough for me. I normally need 6 to 8. I don't know if it's this perimenopause stuff going on, but I've had a lot of symptoms this month. And so it's been kind of affecting my sleep. Well, my husband and I both fell asleep last night by 10 p.m. We were just tired after a whole day at church. And I did not wake up until 8. And I was like, what in the world? I slept 10 hours straight. 10 hours straight. I can't even remember the last time I did that, like years ago. Years and years ago. But it was my body telling me it needed some extra sleep because I've been running a little bit low lately. So pay attention to what your body's telling you. Sometimes you might need some more sleep, and there's no shame in that. There's no guilt in that. You might be more run down. I'm just coming off of a cold that I had for like a week and a half. So my body just might need extra replenishing. So just listen to your body. There's no shame in that. You know, relax your expectations and just soak up the self-care. And then what are some common mom guilt triggers? When I have ladies reach out to me, I'm experiencing a lot of mom guilt. If I start digging, I often find that these are at the core, or these at the foundation of it. Number one of the biggest things is you're trying to please others outside of your family. Okay. And I'm going to talk to ministry families right now because we are the biggest culprits of this triggering us. We know that, you know, especially if you're married to a pastor, that obviously your kids or the way your house is run can disqualify your husband. Okay. That's always in the kind of the back of our head, in the back of our minds. Like, what if I do such a sorry job raising my kids? They disqualify my husband, you know, whatever. Okay. This is very rare that this happens. First of all, because oftentimes, if the pastor is the real deal, he's going to be living in the home when he's preaching from the pulpit. Okay. If he's the real deal, he's not a hypocrite. Now, there are hypocrites out there, but if he's the real deal, then his kids are going to catch that. They're going to want to follow in his footsteps as far as like loving the Lord, serving him. You know, I dealt with this fear a lot more when I was younger, and I let it affect my parenting, I believe, a little bit more than I should have when I was younger, because I was often humiliated when my child would act out or throw a fit. And I'm to the point now where I'm not. My 4-year-old throws fits sometimes. She does inappropriate things, such as like, she has a temper, and so she'll hit a kid. So when that happens, I just don't die of embarrassment and shame. I deal with it. I go take her off to a room. I deal with it. I make her apologize, and we're going to keep working on it. Okay. That's all I can do. I don't try to explain it away. Oh, she's so tired. That's why. Yeah. Well, kids do things when they're not tired too. It's called being a kid. They're kids, right? My kids sin, your kids sin. My kids are not sinless because they were born in a pastor's home. They still have the same flesh. They still have the same sin. And oftentimes it's the church people putting you up on a pedestal when they shouldn't be. We don't have anyone here like this at our church. Thankfully, my husband's always done a really good job of trying to just impart, my kids are kids just like your kids. Don't put us on a pedestal. He doesn't expect them to put us on a pedestal, and they don't. And for that, I am very, very appreciative. But ministry families, you're going to feel, even subconsciously, some pressure. Okay. But there are a lot of people out there wanting you to fail and wanting your kids to fail. I have many haters. And the better that my family does, the more they hate me. And probably too, because a lot of their idols, they're failing in this area of raising good, godly children. And so because their idols are failing, the one that they hate, us and my husband, who have taken a stand against certain behaviors, it's like they're sitting there rubbing their hands with glee, waiting until my kids fall or my kids do some public sin or whatever. And so far that hasn't happened. My kids are legit like good kids, for the most part. Obviously they're not perfect, and they're going to do stupid things and say stupid things, just like I'm going to do stupid things and say stupid things. But just knowing that, I pray a little bit extra hard for my children, knowing that there are people that would love to see them fail. There are people that would love if they rebelled and like turn their back on everything that we've raised them in. And so I try to cover my kids a little bit more in prayer. But that being said, I am not raising my kids in a way to impress all the haters or impress everyone out there or impress any of you online. I'm not raising them for you. I'm raising my kids for the Lord. And I'm raising my kids the way I am because I love them, because I truly believe in it, and because I believe it is the best way to live. It has provided me with an awesome, amazing life. And we have tried to exhibit that to our kids in our marriage and our home. And so far, all of our kids have chosen to walk in those same paths. I might have a kid that rebels someday, and that's going to be on them because they've seen their siblings do right, and they know it's a good life, and they know that we believe it and all that. Even the best families have kids that rebel at times, and that's going to happen. But that being said, I don't raise my kids in a way to please anyone else other than my Savior, my Jesus. I raise my kids the way I am for him and him alone. So you have to really be careful that you don't put others' expectations on your children because you're trying to impress others. Don't do that. You're raising your children for the Lord, and not for anyone else outside of the home. So that's a big one. That's a common mom guilt trigger. Thinking that your kid's behavior is a reflection of you as a mom, just taking everything so personal that your kid does. Oh, they're just doing this to make me look bad. No, they're doing it because they're a kid and they're sinful and they have a sin nature, and they're only 5 and they haven't been alive very long, and they have to be trained in this way, and they're going to mess up, and it's okay. They're going to throw a fit. They're going to act out. That doesn't mean that you're this terrible mom who sits around eating bonbons all day and scrolls your phone and never corrects them. No one's thinking that. No one's thinking that. So just get that out of your head. Be careful finding your identity and how well behaved your children are. Look at me. I am the world's best mother because I have the best trained little robots. Be careful finding your identity and how well behaved your kids are. Don't try to apologize your kids' bad behavior away to others. Sometimes you're just like, that was really bratty of them to do. I mean, what can you say? My 5-year-old shot out the window in our church once with his bow and arrow. And at that moment, that was very defining to me as a mother because it was really embarrassing. But you know what? We dealt with it. We told him, you don't shoot with your bow and arrow towards the church windows. That could have been really bad if there was someone there and whatever. We made him pay for it with his money. We made him work for the money. We made him pay for it. Retribution. We told him there's consequences for your action and this is what you're going to do. But it was at that point in time where I was a young mom. I was only 25 or 26 when it happened. And I'm like, well, that was embarrassing. And I'm never going to say, well, my kid would never, because he just did. the grandson of the pastor just shot out the church window. So they're going to embarrass you, and it's going to go on forever, probably. Hope they're going to bring you pride and joy too. Eventually they will, but parenting also comes with some humiliating moments. So, you won't ruin your kids by them not taking algebra 2 or trigonometry. Just get that out of your head. It'll be okay. If they need extra classes when they get older, they can take extra classes. That's what my kids have done for any area that they were lacking in. But I'm going to say homeschooling provided them with a very well-rounded education, and they have succeeded in every area of life. They have been above their peers for the most point. They have absolutely been at least average when it comes to testing and different things like that, but most of them are above average. So it's not going to ruin them if they don't take algebra 2 or trigonometry. Kids are resilient and they want to love you. Your kids want to love you. It's very, very rare that a kid will completely turn their back on their parent, and their parent had to be doing some really rough stuff for that to happen. The goal is not raising robots. Rather, kids who love you, love God, love others, and they love the things of God. It's not these little robotic, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, no, ma'am, no, sir. How far do I have to jump? How far do I have? It's not about raising robotic little people who mimic your every move. It's about raising children who desire to serve the Lord, who love the Lord, who want to follow after the Lord. Don't raise your kids with other rules and expectations on them. Don't raise them in a way where you're doing it because of peer pressure. Everyone in my church does this. It means I have to do this. No, your family is its own entity. So you get to decide the rules and the regulations and the expectations and the standards and the convictions. You decide that for your children, and you do it because it has a biblical base, not just because everyone in the church does that. You are your own entity. It's not Liberty Baptist Church families and we all do things exactly the same way. No, it's a Liberty Baptist Church with all these separate entities of families. And your kids are going to do things a little different with their kids when they grow up, and that's okay. You can still support and love them. As their mom, you don't have to give your 2 cents. You don't have to give your advice. Let them figure it out on their own. Let them raise them. Now let them raise their own children. But how do we find peaceful sleep at night? Getting your thoughts under control before bed. So read a psalm, shut off your phone, don't watch crime shows. At times in my life when I have been going through anxiety, when I've had anxiety hit, postpartum, it's always been postpartum, there were certain things I had to cut out of my life. I am a huge crime show person. I love watching crime shows. Well, during those times in my life, I had to stop reading anything negative, and I had to stop watching negative things. So I had to turn off the crime shows. I had to basically stay away from the news. I couldn't read about wars because it really upsets me when I read about all these children getting killed. I couldn't read about abortion. I couldn't read about anything negative. I had to just kind of shut that all off if I wanted to have peace. When I'm not going through postpartum stuff or anxiety, it's okay. I can watch that and it doesn't really affect me. But be very sensitive to outside influences when it comes to how it's affecting your mood. Know that you need your sleep to function best the next day. One thing I often do as I'm falling asleep, I like to pray myself to sleep. So I start praying for all of my kids. I start praying for people in our church. I start praying for my friends and their health or different things that they're going through. And I think often about when Jesus was praying and the disciples fell asleep. There is something very calming about praying. And I don't, everyone gets so mad at the disciples for falling asleep, but don't we often do that too? I mean, isn't it hard for us to stay awake at certain times? And so I find praying to be very calming. Oftentimes in the car, I'll pray or I'll sing or something just very calming. I actually like being in the car by myself sometimes because it's very reflective time. You don't really have to, especially if you're driving somewhere you've been 50 million times, you don't really have to think too much while you're driving. So it's a nice time to pray or, just listen to music or whatever. So tomorrow is a new day with no mistakes in it. If you go to bed, you can just tell yourself, this is a crummy day. I mean, let's just be honest. It was a crummy day. That's okay. Tomorrow is a new day with no mistakes in it yet. Every time you don't give in to anger or frustration during the day, you are training your mind to do better with each tense situation. We train our minds how to react. When someone says something negative to us, do we immediately get defensive and just fly off the handle and say the first thing that comes to mind? Well, then we're training our brains to do that with each and every situation where that occurs. Or do we take a moment to pause, think about what they've said, kind of process it, and then either move on, take their advice to heart and try to do better, or try to clear the air with them. Say, you know, I'm sorry, this was misunderstood. I didn't really mean it to come out that way. Can we talk about this? Whatever. So you train your brain how to react to each situation. Those who show calm in chaos are truly amazing. Anyone can blow up or lose it. Anyone can. But it takes self-control to rise above average and to keep your emotions, especially under control. It's in our flesh to want to just fly off the handle and react with impatience or frustration or anger. So it's a very admirable trait when you can keep those things under control and just be in control of yourself. And then is there ever a time when you need to seek medical help for just mom guilt, feeling overwhelmingly guilty? I would say if you have thoughts of self-harm or harming others, definitely get help. Maybe go to your doctor and ask about hormonal things. Could this be going on? Is this messed up? It might be a deficiency. Work with an herbalist. Try to get your hormones regulated, worked out. There's no shame in like different supplements, St. John worts, ashwagandha, however you say it, chamomile. There's different calming things that you can take, that you can incorporate into your life that might help. Follow your husband's leading on spacing kids if need be. This might be a controversial take, but I don't care. This is what I believe. And I believe God made a woman's body in a way where you know what's going on and you're not clueless. And sometimes I've heard a lot where husbands know their wives are completely overwhelmed. They've sunk to despair levels and they're barely functioning and they just want to stay in bed all day. The house is in chaos. The kids are not being raised. They're not being trained. The husband says, we might need to put some brakes on this, having more kids in the near future. Let's take a couple of years. Maybe they're depleted. Their bodies are depleted. They've had kid every 2 years for the last 10 years, and their body is super depleted in minerals, in just hormonal things. And their husband's like, we need to take a couple of years and you need to heal. Your body needs to heal. You know, we need to let the kids grow up a little bit and then we'll revisit this. That's not that controversial, but it can be. Definitely follow your husband's leading. And I'm talking about if your husband wants this, because I've heard of stories where the husband has wanted it and the wife has gone above his head and said, no, we're not doing that. Like my preacher preached that natural family planning is a mortal sin and we're not going to do that. So then they followed the preaching of their pastor over that of their husband's advice. Your husband knows you better than anyone. Your husband knows if this is going to be seriously detrimental to your health. Maybe you're told that your uterus is going to explode if you have another baby, but you've been told by pastors that that doesn't matter, you do whatever. And even though there's not really anything specifically in the Bible about whether or not to space children, which I personally believe women in the Bible did space children through breastfeeding, which is a form of natural family planning. Breastfeeding is. So I do think that women did know their bodies very well in the Bible, because Lot's daughters knew when to be with him in order to conceive. So, you know, they knew their bodies very well. And they did do things like that to space children just to allow their bodies to heal and allow them to recuperate. So trust your husband, especially if he's telling you. We talk about being submissive to our husbands, right? And following their lead. But then when it comes to things like this, we balk at it. That's not right. You're supposed to follow his leading in all areas of life. And I have had a lot of women in the past reach out to me who are very conflicted about this because their husbands want to take a little bit of a break. And they're like, no, I just can't do that because, you know, every child is a blessing. You know, we just can never do anything to prevent anything because it's like this mortal sin, because we're Catholic now or something, you know, it's like this mortal sin. And it's not a mortal sin. It's only a mortal sin. It's a sin when you kill a fertilized egg. That's where the sin lies, when you're trying to get rid of a established baby, because we believe at that spark of life, that's life. And that is a human soul. So anyways, moving on, because I know that's controversial, follow your husband's leading on spacing kids if need be. End of story. And then don't compare yourself to other families, because your family is your family and no one else's. And I truly believe that the biggest contributors to mom guilt is comparing yourself with other families and then just believing everything we see on social media, because social media is fake. Social media influencers are fake. My type of social media influencer is the one that shows real life and what really goes on in the home. That's my type of social media influencer. So, and I guess they wouldn't be that good if they were showing real life, right? Because real life is boring. No one wants real life. We want like all these fake perfection stories. So just be careful. I do think that comparison is one of the biggest thieves of joy, is comparison. Be happy with your husband, be happy with your kids, be happy with your life. Do the very best you can. And at the end of the day, if you had a bad day, just give it over to God, shut your thoughts off, pray yourself to sleep, sing a song, look into herbs that can help. There are herbs that can support hormones. There are herbs that can support pregnancies and postpartum. I will say overall, that has been the number one thing that has helped my times of anxiety, my times of perimenopausal symptoms. That is the biggest thing that's helped me, is all the herbs and things that God has given us for those different things, I believe. God kept us in mind, ladies, and he gave us herbs like red raspberry leaf and ashwagandha and all these other St. John's worts to help alleviate different things that we have to go through because of the curse, honestly, right? Because of the fall of mankind, we have all these different things we have to deal with. So oftentimes it's not a spiritual problem. Most of the people saying that are men who have never been through postpartum, never been through pregnancy. I think oftentimes anxiety and feeling the mom guilt, it's all hormonal. And in my own life, that's what it's been. 100%. It's been hormonal. And they tend to just straighten out. And then one day you wake up and you realize, wow, this is a really good life. And I'm rocking it as a mom and I'm rocking it as a wife. And you just wake up and you're like, okay, I don't know what that little bout of anxiety or mom guilt that I was having, but it's really a good day. Remember that the hardest thoughts are late at night at like midnight. That's why I always advise young wives and moms, don't fight it out till midnight with your husband, because really nasty things can get said when everyone's tired and you just want to sleep. Go to sleep and work on it the next day. You're still going to be married. Divorce is not an option. So just work it out. Work it out the next day. You have your whole life to work it out. Because at night, you oftentimes say things that you don't mean in the heat of the moment. So when you're tired, things just seem worse. And then when you wake up and the sun is shining and you have your coffee, suddenly the world is right again. And everything is sunny and roses and, whatever. So if you're having mom guilt, I'm really sorry, because we've all been there. But hopefully these tips will help. And if you need any other advice, reach out to me. I've been through it all. So I'll try to help you in whatever way I can. So how do I get an almost 3-year-old under control when I'm tied down under a newborn? He's constantly keeping him awake with kisses and accidentally kicking him in the head, crawling all over. Oh man, I don't know, Julia. And that's funny, Raquel. I feel like sleep and naps solved 50% of my problem. Do I snore when I sleep? No, I don't think so. Why are you asking that? Raquel, that's funny, because I feel like sleep and like coffee, which is an oxymoron, I guess. I think that helps solve most of my problems. But Julia, yeah, that's tough. You're just in one of those tough seasons. So I guess you're just going to have to be consistent and calmly tell him, no, we don't do this with the baby. No, we have to be gentle, just over and over and over again until he gets it. Because that's really all it takes at that age, is just repetition and just continually saying it over and over and over again. So, all right, I think that's it, ladies. That's all I have for you today. So anyways, that is all I have. I hope this helps. Like I said, reach out if you have any other questions or comments, and I will, thinking what's next week. Yes, I will be here next Monday. I won't be here the weekend or the Monday after, possibly. So I might try to do a premiere of Nicole and I need to do a new show. I think we're going to do one about kids and herbs. doing about herbs specifically for children. So look forward to that show, and I might try to just premiere it in a couple weeks. So I hope you have a great week. Go love God, love your husband, and love your children, and love them well. And we will see you next week.